My name is Cassandra, 32 years old, sitting in my husband's Bentley as we drive to my brother's rehearsal dinner in Napa Valley. Marcus, my millionaire husband, grips the steering wheel with confident hands while casually mentioning he invited his ex-wife Victoria to the wedding because she is basically family. I smile sweetly and tell him, of course I trust him completely. What he does not know is that my phone holds a message I sent to Thomas Victoria's current husband inviting him as my plus one tonight. Before I share what happened at that unforgettable rehearsal dinner, I would love to know where you are watching from today. Please hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I taught my husband and his ex-wife a lesson they will never forget. The California sun was setting over the vineyard-covered hills of Napa Valley as we drove toward the Auberge du Soleil resort, where my younger brother Christopher was holding his rehearsal dinner. At 28, Christopher had built a successful tech company from his dorm room and was now worth $15 million. Tomorrow he would marry Isabella, the daughter of a California state senator, in what society pages were calling the wedding of the year, with a budget exceeding $500,000. As for me, I had built my own success as an interior designer with a client list that included Silicon Valley executives and San Francisco's old money families. My work had been featured in Architectural Digest 3 times, and my firm Cassandra Spaces employed 12 designers. I never needed Marcus's money, which made our relationship dynamic particularly interesting. Marcus Blackwood, 35 years old, was the CEO of Blackwood Real Estate Development, a company he inherited from his father, but grew into an empire worth $50 million. We had been married for 5 years, living in a $10 million mansion in Pacific Heights, with views of the Golden Gate Bridge. From the outside, we appeared to have the perfect life. The charity galas, the vacation homes in Aspen and Miami, the matching Bentleys in our garage. But perfection was an illusion we performed for others. Marcus enjoyed control, especially financial control. He insisted on joint accounts while keeping several of his own. He would buy me jewelry I never asked for, then remind me of its cost during arguments. He postponed discussions about children, repeatedly claiming the timing was never right, though I suspected he simply did not want to share my attention. The shadow that hung over our marriage had a name: Victoria Blackwood, formerly Victoria Chen, Marcus's ex-wife. They had divorced 7 years ago, but she remained a constant presence in our lives through their daughter Sophia, who was now 10 years old. Victoria was a former supermodel who had graced the covers of Vogue and Harper's Bazaar before transitioning into the business world with a luxury skincare line that had made her independently wealthy. Their divorce had been what Marcus called amicable, though I noticed how his jaw tightened whenever her name came up in certain contexts. They shared custody of Sophia, which meant Victoria was at every birthday party, every school play, every holiday gathering. She would sweep in with her perfect bone structure and designer clothes, air kiss me like we were old friends, then spend the evening finding subtle ways to remind everyone she had been Mrs. Blackwood first. 3 years ago, Victoria had remarried. Thomas Whitmore was a British investment banker who managed portfolios for Silicon Valley's elite. With his old money background and new money success, Thomas was worth over $100 million, something Marcus particularly resented. Their wedding had been a 400-guest affair at a castle in Scotland, which Sophia had described in exhausting detail for months afterward. For the past 6 months, I had been the primary planner for Christopher's wedding. As the only family member with design experience and connections in the luxury event space, I had taken on the role with enthusiasm. Every detail had been carefully curated, from the 7-tier cake created by a celebrity pastry chef to the flowers flown in from Holland. The rehearsal dinner alone had required 3 months of planning, with a guest list of 100 of the couple's closest friends and family. Marcus had initially shown zero interest in the wedding preparations. He would wave me off when I asked his opinion on menu selections or seating arrangements, claiming he trusted my judgment completely. His involvement extended to writing a check for our portion of the expenses and ensuring his tuxedo was properly tailored. That changed 2 weeks ago when the guest list was finalized. Christopher had included Victoria out of courtesy given their long history. She had known my family since before the divorce, attending several family gatherings during her marriage to Marcus. My parents still sent her Christmas cards, and my mother occasionally commented on her Instagram posts about Sophia's achievements. When Marcus discovered Victoria was invited, his entire demeanor shifted. Suddenly, he was deeply interested in every aspect of the wedding. What wine would be served? Where would the reception be held? Who else from his circle would attend? He spent an hour on the phone with Christopher, ostensibly to congratulate him, but really to confirm Victoria's attendance. The signs had been accumulating for months before this. Late-night phone calls about Sophia that lasted an hour, when 10 minutes would have sufficed. The way Marcus's face lit up when Victoria texted about custody arrangements. The photo from their wedding that he still kept in his office, claiming it was for Sophia's sake when she visited, though Sophia never went into his office. There were the comparisons delivered casually, but cutting deep. Victoria's dedication to fitness despite having a child. Victoria's business acumen in building her skincare empire. Victoria's ability to speak 3 languages fluently. Victoria's natural elegance that did not require stylists or effort. Each comparison was followed by a claim that he was simply making observations, that I was being too sensitive, that comparing was not the same as caring. I had also noticed the financial irregularities. Charges on our joint credit card for restaurants I had never been to, always explained as client dinners. A payment for a luxury apartment in Pacific Heights that Marcus claimed was an investment property, though he never showed me the rental agreements. Transfers to accounts that were supposedly for Sophia's college fund, but seemed excessive for a 10-year-old's future needs. 2 weeks ago, after Marcus casually announced he had personally invited Victoria to the wedding, I began my investigation in earnest. Her social media, usually filled with product launches and mother-daughter photos, had recently featured several posts about reconnecting with one's past and the importance of closure. There were photos of her looking stunning in outfits that seemed chosen for maximum impact, captions about growth and change that felt pointed. The comment section was particularly revealing. Mutual friends from Marcus and Victoria's married days were remarking on how good she looked, how success suited her, how some chemistry never really dies. One comment from a woman named Patricia, who I knew had been Victoria's maid of honor, read simply, "Some loves are meant to come full circle." Marcus's behavior after inviting Victoria had been increasingly transparent. He scheduled an emergency appointment with his barber. He ordered 3 new tuxedos, claiming the first 2 did not fit properly. He made reservations at the hotel's spa for treatments he had previously mocked as unnecessary pampering. He even started working out with his personal trainer twice daily, something he had not done since our wedding. The night he told me about inviting Victoria, we were having dinner at our usual table at the French Laundry. Between the second and third courses, he mentioned it as casually as if he were commenting on the weather. Victoria will be at the wedding, of course. I made sure to personally extend the invitation. She is Sophia's mother, basically family. If you trust me, you will understand why this is important. I had set down my fork, taken a sip of the Chateau d'Yquem he had ordered to impress the sommelier, and smiled. Of course, darling. I trust you completely. Why would not? I want Sophia's mother there. It is Christopher's big day, and the more family, the better. The relief that washed over his face told me everything I needed to know. He had expected resistance, perhaps even a scene. My easy acceptance made him suspicious for exactly 3 seconds before his ego convinced him I was simply being the understanding wife he deserved. That night, while Marcus slept, I sat in my home office with my laptop and a glass of wine researching Thomas Whitmore. His LinkedIn profile painted a picture of staggering success. Oxford educated, he had started his career at Goldman Sachs before founding his own investment firm. His client list was a who's who of tech billionaires and entertainment moguls. He sat on the boards of 3 Fortune 500 companies and had recently been profiled in the Financial Times. More interesting were the personal details I gleaned from various sources. Thomas and Victoria appeared to live increasingly separate lives. She was photographed at events alone more often than with him. He had purchased a penthouse in London 6 months ago, suggesting extended time away from their Atherton mansion. Their couple's Instagram posts had dwindled from daily to monthly, and the comments about their perfect marriage had been replaced by silence. I found Thomas's direct email through his company website and spent 2 hours crafting the perfect message. Professional enough to pass any assistant's screening, intriguing enough to warrant a personal response. I mentioned the wedding, our mutual connection through Victoria, and suggested a brief coffee meeting to discuss a delicate matter of mutual interest. His response came within an hour despite the late evening timestamp. He proposed meeting the next day at a discreet cafe in the financial district, far from both our usual circles. His tone was cautious but curious, the response of someone who suspected what this might be about but needed confirmation. The next morning I told Marcus I had a client meeting in the city. He barely looked up from his phone where he was texting someone with a smile I recognized but had not seen directed at me in months. I dressed carefully for my meeting with Thomas, choosing an outfit that was professional but memorable, wanting to make the right impression on someone who might become either an ally or a complication. 2 weeks before the rehearsal dinner, I sat across from Thomas Whitmore in a quiet corner of Blue Bottle Coffee in the financial district. He had arrived 5 minutes early, chosen a table with clear sight lines to both entrances, and stood when I approached with the kind of old-world manners that had probably been drilled into him at boarding school. At 42, Thomas was distinguished in that particularly British way, with silver threading through his dark hair and laugh lines that suggested he had once smiled more than he did now. He wore a bespoke suit that probably cost more than most people's cars, but somehow made it look effortless rather than ostentatious. His wedding ring, I noticed, was absent. "Cassandra," he said, extending his hand, "I must admit your message intrigued me. It is not often I receive such carefully worded invitations to coffee from my wife's husband's current wife." The way he phrased it with just a hint of dry humor immediately put me at ease. I had prepared a dozen different opening lines, but his directness deserved the same in return. "I assume you know that Victoria will be attending my brother's wedding this weekend," I said, watching his face carefully. His expression shifted minutely, a tightening around the eyes that someone less observant might have missed. "She mentioned it, yes." Apparently Marcus felt her presence was essential for some reason. The way he said Marcus's name told me everything I needed to know about his feelings toward my husband. There was history there, layers of resentment and suspicion that probably matched my own. "Can I be completely honest with you, Thomas?" I asked, though I had already decided on honesty before walking through the door. "Please do." In my experience, Americans often say they want to be honest right before they lie spectacularly, but somehow I doubt that is your intention here. I could not help but smile at that. My husband invited his ex-wife to my brother's wedding without consulting me, announced it as a fait accompli, and has been preparing for her arrival like a teenager getting ready for prom. Your wife has been posting about reconnecting with the past and wearing increasingly spectacular outfits to drop off Sophia at exchanges. I think we both know what is happening here. Thomas leaned back in his chair, studying me with the kind of intensity that had probably served him well in negotiating billion-dollar deals. For a long moment he said nothing, just turned his coffee cup in precise quarter rotations on its saucer. "Victoria has been different lately," he finally said. "Distracted. She has started working out with her old trainer, the one she used during her modeling days. She has been taking mysterious phone calls that she claims are about her business, but always require privacy. Last week I found a credit card statement for a lingerie boutique in San Francisco. When I asked about it, she said it was for a photo shoot for her skincare line. Her skincare line that has never required lingerie in its marketing. We sat in companionable silence for a moment, two people discovering they were in the same sinking boat. "What exactly are you proposing?" Thomas asked, though his slight smile suggested he already knew. "I think it is time Marcus and Victoria learned that actions have consequences. You are already invited to the wedding as Victoria's +1, are you not?" He shook his head. "She said it would be awkward given Marcus would be there. She suggested I had important business in London that weekend. I had actually cleared my schedule months ago when the invitation first arrived." "Perfect. Then you are free to be my +1 instead. Marcus invited his ex-wife, so naturally I can invite her husband. We are all family after we—" "Not Thomas's laugh was genuine, rich, and unexpected. You want to ambush them. I want to hold up a mirror, I corrected. Let them see how their behavior looks to everyone else. Let them experience the discomfort they have been causing others. And what makes you think I want my marriage to implode in such a public fashion, he asked, though his tone suggested curiosity rather than resistance. Your wedding ring is in your pocket, not on your finger. You have been checking your phone every few minutes but putting it away without responding, which means you are hoping for a message from someone who is not messaging you. You ordered your coffee black, but have added 3 sugars, which suggests you are doing things differently than usual. If I had to guess, I would say you have already consulted a divorce attorney, but have not pulled the trigger yet. Thomas stared at me for a moment, then laughed again. You are quite observant, are not you, interior designer, Marcus said. But I think you missed your calling as a detective. Designing spaces requires understanding people, I explained. You have to know how they really live, not how they pretend to live. Marcus never understood that about my work. He thinks I just pick pretty colors and expensive furniture. We spent the next hour coordinating our plan. Thomas would arrive at the rehearsal dinner precisely 30 minutes after Victoria, ensuring maximum impact. We would not announce our arrangement beforehand, letting the surprise speak for itself. We exchanged phone numbers with the understanding that our communication would remain strictly about logistics. As we prepared to leave, Thomas asked a question that had clearly been bothering him. Why not just confront Marcus directly? Why the elaborate production? Because Marcus only understands public perception, I replied. Private conversations can be dismissed, justified, gaslighted away. But public humiliation, that leaves a mark. And frankly, after 5 years of being compared to Victoria, of being made to feel less than, I think I deserve a moment of satisfaction. Thomas nodded slowly. You know this will likely end your marriage. I smiled, perhaps the first genuine smile in months. That is the point, Thomas. Some endings need witnesses. Over the next 2 weeks, I prepared for the rehearsal dinner with the kind of attention to detail usually reserved for military operations. I commissioned a new gown from a designer in the city, a stunning creation in midnight blue that would photograph beautifully and make me impossible to ignore. I booked appointments with the best hair and makeup artists in Napa, the ones usually reserved for the wedding party. Marcus, meanwhile, was oblivious to everything except his own preparation. He had his car detailed twice, bought new cufflinks that cost more than most people's monthly salary, and actually asked my opinion on cologne, something he had not done since our dating days. He mentioned Victoria constantly, always in the context of Sophia, but his excitement was palpable. 3 days before the rehearsal dinner, Victoria called me directly. Her voice was honey sweet, the tone she used when she wanted something. Cassandra, darling, I wanted to thank you for being so understanding about the wedding invitation. I know it must be awkward me being there, but Christopher and I go way back and I would hate to miss his big day. Of course, Victoria. Family is family after all. Will Thomas be joining you? There was a pause, just long enough to be telling. Unfortunately, he has business in London that weekend. You know how it is with international finance, always something urgent. What a shame. I was looking forward to finally getting to know him better. Well, I am sure we will all have a lovely time regardless. After I hung up, I sent Thomas a simple text. She just confirmed you will be in London. His response was immediate. Currently sitting in my Atherton office looking at my very empty London calendar. The game is definitely afoot. Christopher called the night before the rehearsal dinner, his voice tight with pre-wedding stress. Cassandra, is everything okay with you and Marcus? He called me 3 times today to confirm Victoria's seat assignment. He wants her at the family table. I told him that was inappropriate, but he insisted you were fine with it. Put her wherever you want, Chris. Tomorrow night is your celebration. Do not worry about Marcus and his drama. There was a pause. You are planning something, are not you? Please tell me you are not going to ruin my rehearsal dinner. I would never ruin your celebration, little brother. But I might make it memorable. The morning of the rehearsal dinner, I woke to find Marcus already gone, a note saying he had an urgent meeting in the city. His tuxedo hung in our bedroom, pressed and perfect, with the new cologne sitting prominently on his dresser. I noticed he had also left out his wedding ring, choosing instead a platinum band with diamonds that Victoria had given him for their 5th anniversary. He claimed he kept it for Sophia, but apparently tonight Sophia needed to see it on his finger. I spent the day at the resort spa letting the tension of the past 2 weeks melt away in mineral baths and hot stone massages. My phone buzzed occasionally, with texts from Thomas confirming timing and sharing his own observations about Victoria's preparation. She had apparently spent 3 hours at the salon and had tried on 4 different dresses before settling on a red number that he described as more appropriate for a seduction than a rehearsal dinner. As I dressed that evening, I felt the kind of calm that comes with certainty. The midnight blue gown fit perfectly, hugging my curves, before flowing into a dramatic train. The stylist had created an elegant updo that showed off the diamond earrings Marcus had given me for our anniversary, the ones I rarely wore because they felt like shackles disguised as jewelry. My makeup was flawless, highlighting my best features without looking overdone. Marcus arrived as I was applying the final touches of lipstick. He stopped in the doorway, his expression momentarily confused, as if he had forgotten I could look this good when I tried. "You look beautiful," he said, though it sounded more like an accusation than a compliment. "Thank you, darling. You look quite handsome yourself. Victoria will be impressed." The way his face flushed told me I had hit my mark. He mumbled something about checking with the valet and disappeared again, leaving me to make my own way to the venue. The Auberge du Soleil sat perched on a hillside like a crown jewel, its terraces offering panoramic views of the Napa Valley that looked like an impressionist painting in the setting sun. I had spent 3 months planning every detail of this rehearsal dinner, from the custom menu featuring locally sourced ingredients to the jazz quartet that would provide the evening's soundtrack. 100 of Christopher and Isabella's closest friends and family members would gather in the private dining room I had decorated with thousands of white orchids and twinkling lights. I arrived deliberately early, wanting to ensure everything was perfect before the drama I knew was coming. The event coordinator, a woman named Patricia, who had become my ally over the planning months, met me at the entrance with barely contained excitement. "Everything is exactly as you specified, Cassandra. The champagne is chilling, the band is warming up, and the photographer has already started capturing the venue. Your brother and Isabella arrived 10 minutes ago and are greeting early guests on the terrace." I made my rounds, checking flower arrangements and place cards with the attention to detail that had made my design firm successful. The family table where the wedding party would sit had been the subject of intense negotiation. Marcus had lobbied hard for Victoria to be seated there, claiming Sophia would want her mother close. I had finally acquiesced, but only after ensuring Thomas's name was added to the seating chart at the last minute. Christopher found me adjusting a centerpiece, his nervous energy practically vibrating off him. In his custom Tom Ford tuxedo, my baby brother looked every inch the successful tech entrepreneur he had become. Isabella stood beside him in a flowing champagne-colored dress, her senator father's political poise evident in her practiced smile. "Cassandra, you have outdone yourself," Christopher said, pulling me into a careful hug that would not disturb my hair. "This is absolutely perfect. Are you happy?" I asked, studying his face for signs of the little boy who used to come to me with his problems. "Ecstatic, terrified, ready. All of it," he laughed. "Though I have to ask, Marcus seems unusually interested in tonight. He called me 3 times today about Victoria's arrival time." I kept my expression neutral. "You know Marcus. He likes to be prepared for everything." Isabella leaned in conspiratorially. "Well, if you ask me, inviting his ex-wife was tacky. But your brother is too polite to uninvite her once Marcus extended the invitation." Before I could respond, the guests began arriving in earnest. Silicon Valley executives, mixed with old money San Francisco families, creating an interesting blend of new technology and old tradition. My parents arrived in coordinated outfits my mother had probably selected weeks ago, both beaming with pride at their successful children. The cocktail hour progressed smoothly, with guests mingling on the terrace as the sun set over the valley. I noticed Marcus had positioned himself near the entrance, checking his watch every few minutes. He had already consumed 2 martinis, unusual for someone who prided himself on control. At precisely 7:30, Victoria Blackwood made her entrance. She had chosen a red dress that was technically appropriate, but deliberately provocative, with a neckline that plunged just low enough to demand attention and a slit that revealed her still perfect legs with every step. Her hair fell in waves that had probably taken 3 hours to look effortless, and her makeup was camera-ready perfect. She moved through the room like she owned it, which, given the number of heads that turned, she effectively did. Marcus materialized at her side within seconds, his face lighting up in a way I had not seen in years. He kissed her on both cheeks, lingering just a moment too long to be appropriate, then guided her into the room with his hand on the small of her back. The gesture was so intimate, so familiar, that several guests exchanged glances. Cassandra Victoria's voice carried across the room as she approached me, arms extended for an air kiss that would avoid actually touching. "You look lovely, darling. What a beautiful event you have created. Christopher is so lucky to have such a talented sister." Her compliment was delivered with just enough condescension to sting, while appearing gracious to observers. This was Victoria's special talent, the ability to cut you while smiling so sweetly that defending yourself would seem petty. "Victoria, how wonderful you could make it. And that dress, I have never seen anything quite like it at a rehearsal dinner." The slight emphasis on rehearsal dinner was not lost on her. Her smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Well, I believe in dressing for the occasion. This is such a special celebration. Marcus was just telling me how much work you put into planning everything." Marcus was already at her elbow with a glass of champagne, having abandoned me the moment she arrived. They fell into conversation immediately, their bodies angled toward each other in a way that excluded everyone else. I watched as he laughed at something she said, throwing his head back in genuine amusement I had not inspired in months. Other guests were beginning to notice. My Aunt Martha, a woman who had attended every family event for 40 years, sidled up to me with concern written across her face. "Darling, is everything all right? Marcus seems quite attentive to his ex-wife." "Oh, Aunt Martha, they are just catching up. You know how it is with blended families. We all have to get along for Sophia's sake." But Martha's expression suggested she was not buying my explanation, and she was not the only one. I could see the whispers starting, the sidelong glances, the raised eyebrows, as Marcus continued to hover around Victoria like a moth to flame. They had gravitated to a corner of the terrace, their conversation animated and punctuated by Victoria's tinkling laugh. She touched his arm frequently, letting her hand linger just long enough to be noticed. He leaned in when she spoke, ostensibly to hear her better over the jazz quartet, but really to get closer to her orbit. Christopher appeared at my side, his jaw tight. "Do you want me to intervene?" "This is getting embarrassing." "Let them be," I said calmly. "They are just catching up." "Catching up, Cassandra? He looks like he's about to propose to her again. People are starting to talk. People always talk, Chris. Tonight is about you and Isabella. Do not let them distract from that." But even as I dismissed his concerns, I was hyper-aware of every movement Marcus and Victoria made. The way she threw her head back when she laughed, exposing her throat in a gesture that was deliberately sensual. The way he stood too close, his body language screaming possession and desire. The way they had created their own little bubble, oblivious to the 100 other guests watching their performance. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas and wrote, 10 minutes. "Are you certain about this?" I typed back quickly. Never been more certain of anything. Isabella's father, Senator Morrison, approached with his wife, both looking concerned. "Cassandra. Dear, perhaps someone should remind Marcus that he has a wife present. His behavior is becoming quite noticeable." I smiled serenely. Living up to my name. "Thank you for your concern, Senator. Marcus is just being a good host to all our guests. Shall we head inside? Dinner is about to be served." As the guests began filing into the dining room, I watched Marcus escort Victoria inside, his hand again finding the small of her back. She leaned into him as they walked, whispering something that made him grin like a schoolboy. They were so absorbed in each other that they did not notice the photographer capturing their every interaction, or the wedding videographer who had turned his camera in their direction. The dining room looked spectacular in the candlelight, with the orchids seeming to glow and the crystal glasses catching the flame like tiny stars. Guests found their seats amid appreciative murmurs about the decor, though many were still casting glances at Marcus and Victoria. Marcus had steered Victoria to the family table, where he pulled out her chair with a flourish he had never shown me. He sat beside her despite his place card being next to mine at the head table. When I approached, he barely looked up. "Darling, I switched the seating a bit. You do not mind, do you?" Victoria was feeling a bit overwhelmed by all the people she has not seen in years. Victoria smiled up at me with false vulnerability. "I hope you understand, Cassandra. It has just been so long since I have seen some of these people. Marcus is being such a dear helping me reconnect." "Of course," I replied smoothly. "Whatever makes you comfortable." I took my assigned seat, now conspicuously alone at the head table, while my husband sat 3 tables away, leaning toward his ex-wife with rapt attention. The empty chair beside me seemed to grow larger with each passing moment, a physical representation of the void in my marriage. Christopher stood to make the evening's first toast, his voice carrying clearly through the room. "Before we begin this wonderful dinner my sister Cassandra has so beautifully orchestrated, I want to thank you all for joining Isabella and me as we prepare for tomorrow's celebration. Your presence here means the world to us." As he continued, I noticed Victoria's hand had found its way to Marcus's arm, resting there with casual intimacy. He made no move to remove it, instead covering it briefly with his own hand, in a gesture that several guests definitely saw. My phone lit up with another text from Thomas just arrived. "Walking in now." I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and prepared for the show to begin. Thomas Whitmore walked into the dining room with the kind of quiet confidence that made the entire space reorganize itself around his presence. He moved through the doorway in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that emphasized his tall, lean frame, his silver-streaked hair catching the candlelight. Every female head in the room turned, and several male ones too, as he scanned the space with the calculating eyes of someone who had just entered a high-stakes negotiation. His gaze found me immediately, and his face broke into a warm smile that transformed his otherwise austere features. He walked directly toward me, ignoring the curious stares and the sudden hush that fell over nearby tables. When he reached me, he took my hand and raised it to his lips in a gesture that was both old-fashioned and surprisingly intimate. "Cassandra, darling, please forgive my lateness. The traffic from the city was absolutely horrendous. You look absolutely stunning this evening." His British accent carried perfectly across the now silent room, and I could feel every eye upon us. From my peripheral vision, I saw Victoria's champagne glass freeze halfway to her lips, her face draining of color as she recognized her husband's voice. "Thomas," I said warmly, standing to greet him properly, "I am so glad you could make it after all. Everyone, this is Thomas Whitmore. Thomas, you know my brother Christopher and his beautiful bride Isabella." Christopher, God bless him, recovered first and extended his hand with a grin that suggested he knew exactly what was happening and thoroughly approved. "Thomas, what a pleasant surprise. We thought you were in London this weekend." Thomas shook his hand firmly, his expression perfectly pleasant. "Change of plans, I'm afraid. Could not miss such a momentous occasion. Your sister was kind enough to extend a personal invitation when she heard my original plans had fallen through." The ripple of recognition spread through the room like wildfire. Thomas Whitmore, Victoria's husband, here at Cassandra's invitation. The whispers started immediately, a low buzz of speculation and shock that grew louder with each passing second. Marcus had turned in his chair, his face cycling through expressions like a malfunctioning slideshow: confusion, recognition, anger, and finally a kind of trapped panic. Victoria remained frozen, her perfect composure cracking like expensive porcelain under pressure. Thomas continued his performance brilliantly, greeting other guests near our table with easy charm before turning toward where Marcus and Victoria sat. His expression brightened with what appeared to be genuine delight. "Victoria, darling, what a wonderful surprise. I thought you said Marcus's family would make things awkward, but here we all are, one big happy family." The silence that followed could have been measured in heartbeats. Victoria's mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound emerged. Marcus had gone an interesting shade of red that clashed horribly with his burgundy bow tie. Thomas Victoria finally managed, her voice strangled. "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be in London." Thomas tilted his head with perfectly feigned confusion. "London. Whatever gave you that idea?" "I told you I had cleared my calendar for Christopher's wedding months ago, though I must admit I was rather hurt when you suggested I stay away. Something about it being awkward with Marcus here. But look, he seems perfectly comfortable with my presence." He turned to Marcus with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Marcus, good to see you again. Thank you for taking such good care of my wife this evening. I noticed you were keeping her company." "How thoughtful." Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is inappropriate," he said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Inappropriate." Thomas's eyebrows rose in perfect aristocratic surprise. "How so? Your ex-wife is here so naturally. Cassandra invited me as her companion for the evening. We are all adults here, are we not? All family, as you so often remind everyone when discussing Victoria's presence in your life." I stood as well, moving to stand beside Thomas with practiced grace. "Marcus, darling, you said Victoria was basically family. Well, that makes Thomas family too, does not it? I thought you would be pleased we are all getting along so well." The room was electric with tension and barely suppressed excitement. This was better than any reality show, and everyone knew they were witnessing something that would be discussed for years to come. Several people had their phones out, discreetly recording what was quickly becoming the most dramatic rehearsal dinner in Napa Valley history. Victoria finally found her voice, though it came out higher than her usual carefully modulated tone. "Cassandra, this is obviously some kind of revenge." "Revenge?" I let my confusion appear genuine. "For what, Victoria?" "For you accepting my brother's invitation to his wedding. For you reconnecting with old friends. I am simply ensuring everyone feels included. Is not that what family does?" Thomas had pulled out the empty chair beside me, the one that should have held Marcus, and settled into it with elegant ease. He picked up the place card, with Marcus's name, examined it with interest, then set it aside with a small shrug. "It seems someone has misplaced the seating arrangements," he observed mildly. "Though this works quite well, does not it, Cassandra? We can get to know each other better. I have heard so much about you from Victoria's stories." "What stories?" I asked, with genuine interest loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Oh, you know the usual. How you stole Marcus away from her. How you could never quite measure up to what they had. How Marcus still talks about their marriage as the best years of his life. Quite fascinating, really, though. I am beginning to think Victoria's version might have been somewhat biased." Victoria stood so quickly her chair tipped backward, save from falling only by a quick thinking waiter. "How dare you discuss our private conversations?" Private Thomas laughed, a rich sound that filled the room. "Darling, you have been having these conversations with half of San Francisco. Just last week at the country club you told 3 different people that Marcus was your one true love. Rather awkward for me, really. But I suppose everyone needs their fantasies." Marcus moved toward our table, his hands clenched into fists. "You need to leave. Now." Christopher stood up, his voice cutting through the tension with authority. "Actually, Marcus, this is my rehearsal dinner and Thomas is welcome here. If anyone is uncomfortable with the guest list, they are free to leave." Isabella's father, the senator, stood as well, his political instincts kicking in. "Perhaps we should all take a breath and remember why we are here. Tomorrow, 2 young people are getting married. Tonight should be about them." But the damage was done. The carefully maintained facade of civilized behavior had cracked beyond repair. Victoria was trembling with rage and humiliation, her perfect makeup starting to run as tears threatened. Marcus looked like he wanted to punch Thomas, but could not figure out how to do so without confirming everything Thomas had implied about his feelings for Victoria. Thomas pulled out his phone with casual indifference and showed me the screen, though he made sure others could see it too. Text messages from Victoria dated over the past month filled the display. Messages about missing what they had, about mistakes and second chances, about how some loves never really die. "I thought you all should know." Thomas said conversationally that Victoria has been quite busy these past few weeks. Business trips that were not business. Late nights that were not about work. That new lingerie was not for a photo shoot, was it, darling? Victoria lunged forward, trying to grab the phone, but Thomas pulled it back smoothly. Marcus caught her arm, the gesture intimate and protective in a way that told everyone everything they needed to know about their relationship. Is it true? I asked Marcus directly, my voice carrying clearly through the silent room. Have you been having an affair? The word affair seemed to echo off the walls, bouncing around the space like a pinball of scandal. Marcus's mouth opened, but no denial came. His silence was its own confession. We have not. He started, then stopped, tried again. It is not what it looks like. It never is. Is it? I said softly. It was not what it looked like when you had those late-night co-parenting calls that lasted 2 hours. It was not what it looked like when you helped her buy that apartment, the one you said was an investment property. It was not what it looked like when you kept your wedding photo in your office drawer. Cassandra. Please, Marcus said, his voice dropping to a whisper that everyone strained to hear. Can we discuss this privately? Privately. Like your private lunches with Victoria, your private meetings about Sophia that somehow never included actual discussions about Sophia, your private joint bank account that you thought I did not know about. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone at a back table actually applauded before being shushed by their companion. Christopher stepped forward, his expression a mix of anger and disappointment. Marcus, I think you should leave. Victoria, too. This is my rehearsal dinner, and you have both disrespected not just my sister but my entire family. You cannot be serious, Marcus protested. I am family. I have been married to Cassandra for 5 years, and you have been in love with Victoria for all of them, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice remained. Leave, Marcus. Take your basically family ex-wife and go. My lawyer will be in touch on Monday. The silence that followed my declaration was deafening, broken only by the soft clink of silver against china as someone nervously set down their fork. Marcus stood frozen, his face cycling through denial, anger, and finally a kind of desperate calculation as he tried to figure out how to salvage the situation. Cassandra, you are being ridiculous, he said, his voice taking on the condescending tone he used when he thought I was being too emotional. You are embarrassing yourself and ruining your brother's celebration over nothing. Victoria and I are co-parents. Nothing more. Victoria, who had been uncharacteristically silent, finally spoke up, her voice sharp with indignation. Nothing. You called me your soulmate last Tuesday, Marcus. You said marrying me was the best decision you ever made, and divorcing me was the worst. The collective intake of breath from the assembled guests sounded like wind through the valley. Even Thomas looked genuinely surprised at this admission, though he recovered quickly. Well, that is rather definitive, is not it? Thomas said dryly. Though Tuesday was interesting, considering that was the night you told me you were at a skincare conference in Los Angeles, Victoria. Isabella's mother, a woman who had maintained perfect composure through 30 years of political life, stood up and began directing waiters. Perhaps we should take a brief intermission while everyone collects themselves. The terrace is available for fresh air. But nobody moved. This was the kind of drama that people paid premium cable subscriptions for, happening live and in person. Several phones were now openly recording, and I knew this would be all over social media within the hour. Marcus turned on Victoria, his face contorted with rage. Why would you say that? Here now. Because I am tired of hiding. Victoria's carefully maintained composure finally shattered completely. 7 years, Marcus. 7 years of pretending I do not still love you. 7 years of watching you with her, comparing yourself to what we had. You text me every night. You created that joint account without telling her. You said you were going to leave her after this wedding. The revelation hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun. I felt strangely calm, as if I were watching this happen to someone else. All the pieces I had suspected but never confirmed were falling into place with audible clicks. Thomas stood slowly, his movement drawing attention. 3 years, he said quietly, but his voice carried throughout the room. 3 years I have been married to you, Victoria, and you have been planning your reunion with him the entire time. I was just a placeholder, was not I? Someone wealthy enough to make Marcus jealous, successful enough to wound his ego. Victoria turned to face her husband, tears now flowing freely down her perfectly made-up face. Thomas, that is not true. I loved you. Loved. Past tense. How refreshingly honest of you, finally. Christopher had heard enough. He grabbed the microphone from the band leader and addressed the room with the authority that had made him a successful CEO. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this unexpected entertainment, but I need to ask Marcus Blackwood and Victoria Whitmore to leave immediately. Security will escort you out. Everyone else, please enjoy dinner. The bar will remain open all evening, and trust me, you are going to want to drink heavily to process what you just witnessed. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd as two discreet security guards appeared at the dining room entrance. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but seemed to realize that any further protest would only deepen his humiliation. He turned to me one last time, his expression shifting to something almost pleading. Cassandra, please. We can work this out. Think about what you are throwing away. I am not throwing anything away, Marcus. You already did that when you chose to live in the past instead of building a future with me. I was never your wife. I was just the woman warming your bed while you waited for Victoria to come back. This is not over, he said, his voice low and threatening. Actually, it is, Thomas interjected, stepping slightly forward in a protective gesture that was not lost on anyone. My legal team has already been documenting both of your infidelities for months. Financial records, text messages, credit card statements showing hotel rooms booked on the same nights you were supposedly traveling for business. I believe the legal term is alienation of affection, and I intend to pursue it fully. Victoria gasped. You would not dare. Think of Sophia. Sophia, Thomas said, coldly deserves parents who can model healthy relationships, not whatever this disaster is. She also deserves to know that her college fund has not been depleted to fund her mother's attempts to seduce her father back. More gasps from the crowd. Someone at a back table whispered, "This is better than Real Housewives." Marcus grabbed Victoria's arm, pulling her toward the exit. We are leaving. This is beneath us. Very little seems to be beneath either of you, I called after them, finally allowing some of my anger to show. But you are right about one thing. You should leave. You deserve each other. As security escorted them out, Victoria turned back one last time. You will regret this, Cassandra. You will end up alone. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. No, Victoria. I will end up free. The doors closed behind them with a definitive thud, and for a moment the entire room remained frozen. Then Isabella started clapping slowly at first, then faster, and soon the entire room erupted in applause. Christopher grabbed the microphone again, his face split by a huge grin. Well, that was unexpected. Though I have to say, as rehearsal dinners go, this one will definitely be memorable. Now, I believe we have some extraordinary food getting cold, and a wedding to celebrate. To my sister Cassandra, who just showed more courage than anyone I know, and to Thomas Whitmore, who understood that sometimes the truth needs an audience. The room raised their glasses in a toast that felt more like a celebration of my liberation than Christopher's impending nuptials. Thomas clinked his glass against mine with a small smile. Thank you, I said quietly. For just the two of us. Thank you, he replied. I have been wanting to do something like that for 2 years, but never had the courage. You gave me the push I needed. The rest of the dinner proceeded with an electric energy. People kept approaching our table to offer support, share their own stories of infidelity and betrayal, and congratulate us on our handling of the situation. The senator's wife slipped me the business card of the best divorce attorney in California. Isabella's maid of honor offered to testify if I needed witnesses. Even the usually stern Judge Hoffman, a family friend of 40 years, patted my shoulder and said, "Well played, my dear." Thomas and I spent the evening talking like old friends, discovering we had more in common than just cheating spouses. We shared similar taste in art, both loved travel to obscure destinations, and had built our success through determination rather than inheritance. There was no romantic spark, but something better, the foundation of genuine friendship forged in the fire of mutual betrayal. As the evening wound down and guests began departing, each one stopping to express their support or share their admiration for how we had handled things, Christopher pulled me aside. "Are you okay?" "Really okay." I considered the question honestly. My marriage was over. My husband had been exposed as a cheater in front of everyone we knew. Tomorrow's wedding would forever be associated with tonight's drama. And yet I felt better than I had in years. I am free, Chris. For the first time in 5 years, I am completely free. My parents, who had remained supportive but quiet throughout the ordeal, finally approached. My mother, usually critical of anything that might affect the family's reputation, surprised me by pulling me into a fierce hug. "We never liked him," she whispered. "Your father and I always thought you deserved better. We just did not know how to tell you." Dad nodded, his expression grim. "That prenup you insisted on, despite his protests, is looking pretty smart right now." I had forgotten about the prenup, the one Marcus had fought against so hard, claiming it meant I did not trust him. The irony was not lost on me now. The morning of Christopher's wedding dawned bright and clear, one of those perfect Napa Valley days that seemed designed specifically for vineyard ceremonies. I woke in my hotel suite to find my phone flooded with messages, emails, and notifications. The rehearsal dinner drama had indeed gone viral, with various clips circulating on social media under hashtags like wedding drama and cheater exposed. One video, taken by someone at a neighboring table, had been viewed over 1 million times overnight. The comments ranged from supportive to scathing, with most people applauding how Thomas and I had handled the situation. Someone had even created a meme of Victoria's shocked face when Thomas walked in, captioned, "When your side piece invites your main piece." I ignored them all and focused on the day ahead. Christopher deserved a perfect wedding, and I was determined to give it to him despite the chaos of the night before. I had arranged for a massage therapist to come to my room, followed by the hair and makeup team. If I was going to face the guests who had witnessed my marriage implode, I was going to look spectacular doing it. Thomas texted mid-morning. "The hotel's reception desk just informed me that Marcus tried to check in this morning. They turned him away per Christopher's instructions. Victoria is apparently at the airport. Seems they are not quite the united front they appeared to be." I replied, "Good. Let them sort out their own mess. Today is about Christopher and Isabella." The wedding venue, a stunning vineyard estate with rows of grapevines stretching toward mountain vistas, had been transformed into a fairy tale setting. White roses and peonies lined the aisle with delicate lights strung between ancient oak trees. The ceremony space could have been featured in any luxury wedding magazine, a testament to months of careful planning. As I took my place as maid of honor, I noticed the crowd was even larger than expected. Word of the previous night's drama had apparently made this the hottest ticket in Northern California. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next in this unfolding saga. Thomas had been given a seat in the section reserved for family friends, and he caught my eye with a subtle nod of encouragement. He looked refreshed and confident, as if exposing his wife's infidelity had lifted a weight from his shoulders. The ceremony itself was beautiful and drama-free. Christopher and Isabella exchanged vows they had written themselves, bringing tears to even the most cynical eyes. When the officiant pronounced them married, the cheer that went up felt like a celebration not just of their union, but of love triumphing over deception. At the reception, I gave my maid of honor speech, which I had rewritten that morning. Looking at my brother and new sister-in-law, I am reminded that real love is not about grand gestures or passionate declarations. It is about choosing each other every day, being honest even when it is difficult, and building something together rather than trying to recreate something from the past. Christopher and Isabella have that kind of love, the kind that grows stronger with time rather than living in memory. To the happy couple, may your love story be everything mine was not: honest, faithful, and forward-looking. The applause was thunderous, and Christopher wiped away tears as he hugged me. Several guests approached afterward to say it was the best wedding speech they had ever heard, precisely because it was so honest. The reception was in full swing when my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. It was Marcus, his voice slurred with alcohol. You destroyed everything. You humiliated me in front of everyone we know. No, Marcus. You destroyed everything when you chose to pursue your ex-wife while married to me. I just refused to be your silent victim. Victoria left me, he continued, as if he had not heard me. She said I ruined her marriage to Thomas for nothing. She is going back to New York. I felt no satisfaction, just a tired kind of pity. You two deserved each other, but apparently you could not even manage that. I am going to fight a divorce. I am going to make your life hell. I laughed, actually laughed at the threat. Marcus, you were caught planning to leave me in front of 100 witnesses, many of whom are lawyers and judges. You have a joint bank account with your ex-wife that you hid from me. You admitted to emotional infidelity at minimum. Please fight the divorce. My attorney will be delighted to have such a straightforward case. I hung up and blocked his number, then returned to the reception where Thomas was engaged in animated conversation with Isabella's cousins about emerging markets in Asia. He looked up as I approached, concern in his eyes. Marcus, he guessed. Pathetic final attempt at control, I confirmed. How are you doing? Surprisingly well. My attorney called. Apparently Victoria is eager to settle quickly and quietly. She knows the evidence I have would destroy her brand. Image is everything in the beauty industry. We stood together watching Christopher and Isabella dance, surrounded by people who truly loved them. The contrast to Marcus and Victoria's toxic connection could not have been more stark. 3 months later, both our divorces were finalized. Thomas and I had become genuine friends, meeting for coffee weekly to discuss our recovery and our futures. There was no romance between us, but something better, a deep understanding and respect born from shared experience. Marcus had tried to fight the divorce initially, but when my attorney presented the evidence of financial infidelity and the witness testimony from the rehearsal dinner, he folded quickly. I kept the Pacific Heights house and half of our other assets, more than enough to live comfortably while growing my design business. Victoria's skincare company took a hit when the story went viral, with many customers expressing disappointment in her behavior. She relocated to New York, trying to rebrand herself as a survivor of toxic love. The irony was not lost on anyone who knew the real story. 6 months after that fateful rehearsal dinner, I stood in my redesigned Pacific Heights home, every trace of Marcus erased and replaced with my own aesthetic. My business was thriving, with new clients drawn by both my work and my story of empowerment. I had started dating again, this time with clear boundaries and no tolerance for dishonesty. Thomas had moved to London, taking a position with an investment firm there. We still texted regularly, and he had become one of my closest friends. He was dating a professor of economics at Cambridge, someone who valued honesty above all else. Christopher and Isabella's marriage was stronger than ever, with Isabella pregnant with their first child. They had already asked me to be the godmother, joking that any child with an aunt brave enough to expose cheaters at a rehearsal dinner would never lack for protection. 1 year after the rehearsal dinner, Christopher hosted an anniversary party at the same venue. As a joke, he had the same seating arrangement, though the family table was notably missing 2 names. Thomas flew in for the occasion, and we sat together, raising a toast to truth, consequences, and the courage to demand better. Marcus, I heard through the grapevine, was dating a 23-year-old Instagram influencer who was clearly after his money. Victoria had tried to reconcile with Thomas once her company started failing, but he had simply sent her a copy of their signed divorce papers with relevant sections highlighted. Looking back, that rehearsal dinner was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because I enjoyed the drama or the humiliation, but because it forced me to stop accepting less than I deserved. It taught me that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to keep someone else's secrets. The wedding video, which captured everything, became something of a legend in our social circle. Isabella's father, the senator, even used it as an example in a speech about the importance of transparency in relationships, though he kept the names anonymous. Standing on my terrace looking out at the San Francisco Bay, I thought about the woman I had been just a year ago. The woman who smiled while her husband openly pined for his ex-wife. The woman who accepted disrespect disguised as co-parenting. The woman who thought keeping the peace was more important than keeping her dignity. That woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger, clearer, and infinitely happier. Someone who understood that love should add to your life, not subtract from it. Someone who knew that being alone was better than being with someone who wished you were someone else. Have you ever been in a relationship where you felt like second choice? Where you knew deep down that your partner's heart belonged to someone else? What would you have done in my situation? Would you have confronted them privately or publicly? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let me know if you think I went too far or not far enough. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about standing up for yourself and refusing to accept less than you deserve. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that they are worthy of being someone's first choice, not their backup plan. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, you teach people how to treat you by what you accept. Never accept being someone's second choice when you deserve to be someone's priority. Life is too short to compete with ghosts from the past. Choose yourself. Choose your dignity, and choose a future with someone who chooses you completely. Until next time, this is Cassandra reminding you that sometimes the best revenge is not revenge at all, but simply revealing the truth and walking away with your head held high.